Okay, everyone, I've got an awesome guest here for you guys, someone that I met through Instagram. Again, I always say social media has its pros and cons, but you get to meet some awesome people. And Joe is one of them. Joe Goubeaux. That's an awesome name. Just rhymes, comes right off the tongue. But Joe, introduce yourself. Tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and whatever you want them to know about you.
Yeah, sure. So, yep, I'm Joe Goubeaux. I'm from Ohio, like 30 minutes or so south of Cleveland in the Akron area, just in the suburbs out here. I have a wife and a daughter. She's 8 months old, and a 2-year-old Doberman. She's great. You might hear at some point in this. And I've been bow hunting for, this will be my 6th whitetail season here in Ohio. Been out to New Mexico once. I'm going back again here. The 15th is day 1 for me, September. And yeah, just happy to be here with you, Red.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate your time for sure. And thanks for hopping on here. And so you're a bow hunter, you've got a wife, you've got a daughter. It's interesting having kids, sons and daughters. It's just like, you can't really compare them because I don't know. My daughter's so much easier than my son, but I can tell him to suck it up a lot easier than I can tell her to suck it up. So it's just a big difference there. But are you a first generation bow hunter?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
So my father-in-law kind of passed the torch over to me. He's been hunting since he was 10. But in my family, yeah, I didn't have anybody to that was in the sport, or so I guess in a way, yeah. Yeah.
Cool. I like it. Yeah. So, and then you said 6 years. So adult onset. Is this?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
See, I
Late
need to coin
bloomer,
that
I've been
term.
called everything.
Yeah, I need to coin that term. It's definitely it's a popular thing that I've noticed. Is with me and then a lot of my friends. If you didn't grow up hunting, and you kind of picked it up in adulthood, I'm just going to call it adult onset hunter.
I
But
like it.
that's awesome, man. So whitetail hunting, and then you're going out to New Mexico. But before we even get into the hunting aspect of things, I did kind of want to get to dive in a little bit more about kind of who you are. You're a bodybuilder as well. You enjoy the gym, you enjoy fitness, you enjoy your
Yeah.
family. You obviously enjoy the outdoors. So kind of dabble a little bit on that. Maybe first of all, with fitness, why do you enjoy going to the gym as much as you do?
Yeah. So, man, I feel like there's so much to unpack with that. But I think at the core for me, the gym has always been like a level set. So, when there's stuff going on, just being able to go to the gym, it's always helped me. Like, if work, you're having a lot of, projects due or a lot of like increased stress, the gym was there. So, um, I just have never been able to get away from the gym. I just feel like a completely different person if I don't go. Um, it's just been something that is, I guess, since I was into it, which was like starting in college, I kind of got into like lifting, strictly lifting pretty late too. I just have never been able to give it up. And for me, it's like when you go to the gym, you're around a lot of other people, but they're all kind of doing their own thing. And there's it's nice, man. Like I remember one friend, he always said he always said he was going to church. And that was his time, his meditation time, his time to break himself down, maybe go through the week, like metabolize mentally what happened that day or that week or whatever. But while doing it, putting himself in more like uncomfortable situations, because everything we do, or at least for me, it's like I work, I sit at a desk, I sit in a chair. I very rarely get to get up and go do anything. So by the time I come in the work day is over and I get to walk in the doors of the gym, it's like I'm finally getting to do what, like the whole day would be for me like wasted almost if I didn't.
Right.
So it's, in a way, like it's a mental sort of a stress reliever. It's kind of a level
Mhm.
set for me. But yeah, I don't know, something about it. And then more so as I got into hunting and started looking out west, there's a direct correlation to tweaking your training, tweaking your nutrition that has, I would never have known had I not gone last year. There's a very distinct difference between, a short walk to a stand and miles on the mountain. And so in that regard, around this time of year, there's almost like a different goal in mind. But yeah, it's a, I don't know, it's like the keystone to everything for me. Without it, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. It's something that, it's different for everyone. That's why I like to ask. You do have a purpose, but the purpose seems to kind of not, I wouldn't say change, but kind of morph throughout the year and then kind of goes in a circle, depending on the time of year. So I definitely agree with that. It's a big deal. And especially having kind of a desk job where you're sitting at a desk, you got to get that movement in somehow. Right. And for a lot of people out there, like you're obviously big into lifting, not necessarily always heavy. I love the idea of, there's the days where you're kind of quote unquote toning, what people would understand as that, but more of the hypertrophy. And then you've got the other days where you're lifting a little bit heavier because you want to test yourself, you want to push yourself a little bit more. And then of course you've got the days a little bit more cardio heavy. So it's a good mix in there. And no one likes cardio, but it's a necessary evil. So
Right.
you gotta make a
That's so
little bit
true.
of fun. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Like I can't say no one likes it. I would say there's some people out there that are weird and
Yeah.
off a little bit, but they
Yeah.
enjoy the cardio more
Right.
than they do the lifting. But no, but all jokes aside, it's good to get that movement in. And I think that people need to understand that because and I just I recorded with Ben from Wad Prep, and he put a good example out there. I've used it before as well. Just it's like having the door, like this door right here behind me. If you never open that door, or if you left the door open all the time and you never closed it, what happens to the hinges? Right? They get rusty, they squeak, they dry out, and it's harder to close that door. Like that door wouldn't be too difficult to close, but if it was 100 pounds or more, it
Yep.
might get a little difficult if you leave it for years without moving. And that's the same thing with our bodies. Like there's that synovial fluid in our joints that if there's not moving and constantly being moved around and pumped around, you just get old and creaky and you start to fall apart and dusty, if you could get dusty in those joints. But
Right.
that's awesome. I love that you incorporate that and that's so important to you. Now, with fitness being a big deal, I've looked at your page and then your wife's page. Your wife's big into fitness as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So she has a nutrition degree, so a food science degree and a culinary degree. So she like incorporates like food and macros, and she coaches mostly it's like kind of like working class ladies that are all over the spectrum in terms of like what they do for their job and where they are in their life and age, and coaches them. Sometimes it's like metabolic rehab. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's they're trying to cut, or so it's yeah. That's where with her, I have really just like dove into it kind of like hardcore and
Mhm.
seen the the direct benefit.
Yeah. No, for sure. So you're eating good in both senses of the word. You get the
Right,
culinary degree, but you also get the macro friendly
right,
good food.
right,
So you're eating tastes good and it is good for you. That's awesome. That's a hard combination to find. And
right.
that's awesome that that's another thing too. It's hard when both of you, like if you're in a relationship at all of any kind, or if you're single and you've got a group of friends, right? That you're constantly around. If they don't have those same goals, it's hard to maintain
Yeah,
the idea of either staying healthy. Now yes, there is sacrifices that have to be made. I'm sure you guys aren't going out and having cake and ice cream every night, right? And
right,
I'm sure there's
right,
nights where you have a sweet tooth that you want to fulfill with something a little bit better than fruit. When I say better,
right,
not better for you, but maybe tastes a little bit
right.
better. And but you guys are able to kind of keep each other in check and help each other out. So I think that's awesome. That's great teamwork.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's who you surround yourself with in every capacity. So
Mhm.
nutrition is definitely one of those things for sure. That if you're constantly around temptation of any kind, that you know everything in moderation. Obviously, don't kill yourself over a diet or anything, but
Mhm.
it does make it that much harder to stay locked in.
Yeah. No, for sure. It definitely is. And that's, again, you and I understand that it's a little bit easier to go to the gym. It's like our happy place, right? I don't drink coffee, but that's my cup of coffee. I need that in the morning or else I haven't had a good day. When I used to work in an office, you know, I'd go in and they're, you know, they could just tell. They're like, you didn't have a good workout today, did you? Like, these are
It's
people that don't enjoy working out at all. And they would call me
right.
out on it. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yep. Right. I
You
know,
know,
I totally
sometimes
get
my
it.
boss would be like, you know what, take another 30 minutes to get back down there. Like,
Yeah.
go work out your demons. But
Right.
that's so cool. That I love seeing power couples like that when you guys set those goals together and you're able to achieve that. And not only that, but you know, that's going to pass on to your children. You know, right now you've
Right.
got a daughter. I don't know if you have plans to have more or not. That's none of my business. But even with her, you know, she's going to be raised seeing it's not, because there's also unhealthy ways to go about quote unquote fitness, right? To look good, to be
Right.
shredded, isn't necessarily healthy. If you get down to single digit body fat and you hold that year round, most people, that's unhealthy for them. There's select few people that can manage it and they're not, you know, they're not unhealthy. But for most people, that's not a good place to be. Being stage ready is not necessarily the
Right.
best place to be health wise. So your daughter's going to be raised seeing the health that you can eat healthy, enjoy the food, and how important movement is. And I think that's so key. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. No, yeah, it's huge. I totally agree. And I just feel like there's a lot of misconceptions around food and diet in general. Like you said, you can eat good food that is also good for you. It might take a little bit on the front end with prepping or making, you know, your elaborate grocery list so that you can get everything. It's not easy, but it's definitely
Mhm.
doable. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I have those conversations all the time because, you know, there's the preferred method, right, of getting your proper nutrition is through whole foods. And that's a big reason why, like, I started working with First Phorm was because that's what they push mainly. Like, yes, they're a supplement company. Anyone knows that. But their main focus, especially for people that represent the company, they say, you know, make sure you're getting the whole foods in. And if it's possible for someone to do that and they don't need to buy supplements, awesome, even more power to them, right? But for most people, like, I don't necessarily like to prep, you know, fruits, veggies all the time, so
Right.
I drink a greens drink every once in a while
Yep.
to fill that gap. Or I don't always get it's not easy to eat that much steak or venison or, you know, chicken, so I drink a protein shake every once in a while, like just little things like that. So again, going back to the whole foods thing, it's awesome that you guys are doing that together, but also encouraging your children or your child to do that. I imagine your dog eats really well too. So
Yeah, especially now that the little one's kind of like tossing stuff off. She eats, you know, she just sits by her chair now.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. So tell me a little bit more about that too. How old is your daughter?
She is 8 months. Eight
Okay,
months.
so super young. So she's shooting a recurve. She's pulling 80
Yeah.
pounds on a
Right.
recurve, not on a
Right.
not on a
Not a
compound, but she's holding
right.
that.
I
No,
know.
so how do you guys, I mean, so I have my ways of doing it, right? And that's a big thing that started RedBeard Outdoors. For me, was showing people in that office that I used to work in how children are not a burden when it comes to getting outside and fitness and nutrition. A lot of people cave to, you know, the chicken nuggets and all this stuff. I'm not perfect, and we do it sometimes too, where I'm like, look, I have to work. You know, I send my 15-year-old, I'm like, dude, you know how to work the oven, grab some chicken nuggets. There's some chopped up carrots and stuff. You guys have, that's a meal. But how do you guys incorporate, you know, the fitness aspect, your outdoors living, and not let having an 8-month-old that is very needy? Obviously, they're here because you brought them here. They need your
Right.
attention. You're there to raise them. But how do you incorporate, you know, her into your outdoors and your fitness?
So honestly, it's just, I mean, Elise is great. That's my wife's name. Um, so she's I feel like she's more of a, you know, rough and tough than I am. You know, she likes getting out. She likes going to the gym. Um, so in terms of like fitness, that was the one thing, since it's a gym and you can't like set her down on a bench and do your set. That was the one piece that was hard. So with that, we had to, well, for me, I had to reduce my days, total days, and start to like combine certain lifts. And the reason I had to do that was to kind of offset her schedule. So she would go to the gym either in the beginning of the day or the end of the day, and then I would do the opposite of that. And then her rest day would coincide with my rest days. like flipped. So that way somebody was always with Indy, our daughter, for the gym piece. Now the outdoor piece is great. We've done a couple different things where I've like strapped her on with one of those front carriers. And one of the first hikes we did, I strapped her on the front. She was good through the parking lot into the like trailhead. And I got maybe like a half a mile in, and she was like, did not want anything to do with it. So I took it off, and she made me carry her. So I carried her through. And so that
Talk
was
about a
like, I was like,
bicep
oh,
and forearm pump right there.
yeah. I was
Okay.
like, oh, I'm burning. Um, so we did that. And ever since then, you know, she's been good in the carrier, but just bringing her along with us. And then obviously, you know, the dog loves coming around. So for outdoor stuff, trails or whatever, it's no big deal. I think honestly, like sometimes going to the store, the grocery store was more of a, you know, learning curve, getting her, okay, do we have the thing where she can sit? She's wobbly. Like, do we push a cart and the stroller? So that piece, the outdoor piece was, I think, the easiest. It's just, hey, just take them with you. Now she's in diapers, so it's not to the point where she's old enough where she has to go, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom. You know, we're right in the middle of the hike yet, but all that to come for sure, being out there. But I don't know. It wasn't, you know, I don't know if I didn't go into, because she's my first kid. I don't know if I didn't go into like the parenting thing, like planning like everything out or really thinking about it. We were like crossing those bridges as we come. And hopefully I'm not jinxing myself, but so far it's been pretty solid. And I know, you know, like you said, the partner piece is huge. I mean, if I didn't have Elise to lean on in certain areas, or I would probably have a very different idea of
For sure.
whether or not it's hard or not. But no, so the lifting was really just an adjustment of schedules, and the outdoor piece was just bringing her along, which was, you know, easy. She was born in the wintertime, so it wasn't like straight away I was taking her anywhere. But yeah, and then was there another piece that you asked about with
No. So
her, or
that's
those
cool.
two main pieces?
Yeah. So, and that's, again, for me, it's a big deal because going back to the fitness portion of it, if you weren't strong enough to carry her, that would have been an annoying hike. Like you would have probably turned around and been done. Right. And so that goes back to, I'm a big proponent of the whole idea of everything's a choice, right? You can choose what you want to choose, right? But you got to deal with those consequences. You're always giving something up, right? In that moment, you gave up your comfort so that your daughter would be able to continue on the hike, right? But even before that, you gave up the comfort of sitting on the couch, eating ice cream and all the good stuff, and watching Netflix all day after work, so that, you know, it sounds maybe a little over exaggerated, but one day you could carry your daughter on a hike. One day you can go out to New Mexico and you can go on a hunt. And you chose your hard being a little bit every day rather than a lot all at once, you know?
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
and that's another thing, like for parents, that I think that they can't, the average person can't really understand why it's so important to get that movement every day until you try and take your kids out to the grocery store or on a hike or on a walk, or even just going and playing with them at the park. There's so many parents that can't do monkey bars. Until I was an adult, I couldn't do monkey bars. I was a fat kid growing up, right? I was active, but like I just couldn't hold my own body weight up. I couldn't do pull-ups until high school. And so, you know, now I can go and play monkey bars with my kids, and I can go climb, and I can go do all these other things with them and not be out of breath, rather than being the parent that's at the park sitting on the bench with my phone out and the kids are calling for me to come play, you know? And to me, that's a lot more joyful than the other option of maybe I'm choosing the easy portion now, which would again be to sit on the couch after work, complain about my boss. And, you know, which again, my boss is awesome. I should show you some pictures. You're into photography and we're going to get into that, but he does underwater photography.
Oh, wow.
And I'll show you some of that afterwards. But anyway, getting back to, you know, the easy, you can choose easy now, but you're going to have to deal with the consequences later. And I think that you guys are doing an awesome job. Just a little bit that I've seen and just chatting with you now, it's awesome that you guys incorporate that and you have that plan for your future, your children. So that's awesome.
Thanks.
Congratulations on that, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, yeah, of course. Now let's talk about archery.
Yeah.
I've gone full bore into archery the last 3 years. I love my guns. I'm very much pro 2A, and if I had
Yeah.
unlimited budget, I would delve into both. And my
Right.
wife would probably never see me.
Right.
But you know, knowing as much as I do about guns, being raised around them, I've shifted my focus in the last few years into archery because I wanted to become better at that and more proficient. Because for me, it takes a lot more skill than a firearm. I feel like firearms are pretty simple, point and shoot, literally. You know, as long as your scope styled, you can shoot out to 5, 6, 700 yards, sometimes even 1,000 yards. As long as the scope styled, it stays that way. A bow, on the other hand, flexes, bends, the string stretch, like all this stuff goes into it. And so I've kind of become, you know, a student of that game. But when did you said you picked up a bow about 6 years ago, or was it a little bit before that?
No, no, that's exactly right. Yep.
Cool. So what got you into archery? Why not, you know, shotgun or muzzleloader or something else? Why archery?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I've never even been asked that. So my father-in-law got me into it, but I've never been asked specifically why archery because he does all of those. Um, same as you, big gun guy. Like I completely opposite of how I grew up. I was like, a gun? What's a gun? Like, no idea, um, no hunting background, no hunting family members. So, but archery, I just saw him, and maybe it's because our season is so long in Ohio. You could technically shoot a bow from the end of September all the way to the first weekend, basically, of February. So maybe that was why. Just the times while I was dating my now wife, I just always saw him with a bow, and he's a real, you know, old school disciplined guy. He was like the recurve days, and he tells me about it all the time. He's like these compounds, and uh, but I got into it directly from him. He gave me my first bow. He gave me my second bow. He gave me my third bow. Like he passed all this stuff down to me, um, and he got me into it right from the beginning. How to draw, how to anchor, all your fundamentals. Um, but archery for me, I gun hunt. When our season comes around, we get like a week and a weekend. We've been getting like a bonus weekend in Ohio. I've muzzle loaded. I even took shotgun for turkey. Was the first thing I ever did, actually. But I don't know that. I think it's the simplicity of it. Like you're saying, there's all these factors that come into play, and ballistically how slow it is, really, that all your inputs have such huge impacts at such short distances, comparatively to a rifle, that I was instantly hooked. And I don't know why. I think I have some idea, but like it was just a feeling of, I was like, I should be doing this. And it wasn't something that, my first sit, I remember I sat with him. We were in this handmade, like, elevated box blind, and all these deer were out. It was like pre-rut, all these whitetail. And I was just like, this is like, it was like magic. It was like a magic hour, and all these things came out. And I was like, it's like this every time. And he's like, no, it's not like this every time. And because I was like, oh, this is like
He's like, this is weird. What do you? This is
yeah,
definitely not
yeah,
every time.
no. And because I'm like, I'm an idiot. I'm like looking at it like, oh, I've seen hunting TV shows, I've seen YouTube hunts, and it's production, and you see all this. You always see something, and everyone's always taking a shot every time. So I was that annoying person when he probably was like, this kid doesn't understand. Back before I got into hunting, I was always like, did you shoot anything? And he's like, no. He's like, I didn't shoot anything, and he's passing 3-year-old bucks for, he's letting the farm like mature and stuff, and I just had no idea. um but archery for me, I feel like I've went every year. I get more psychotic about it, you know, changing bows, and then changing arrows, and then changing weights on arrows, and then vein configuration. Okay, now I have a good weight that I like, but I want to make some of that forward. I don't, there's just, it's Ryan. Do you know Ryan Haynes
Oh yeah.
in Oklahoma? So Ryan sent something to me yesterday. He's like, it's a black hole. And I was like, you're right. That's exactly what it is. We were talking about our wives, like, we don't need another release, or we don't need another, but we
Mm,
do,
yeah. Oh
just,
yeah. That ultra
Ultra
view,
View
man. I'm
dropped
telling you.
something, and yeah, so we have to have it. And he said, it's a black hole, and that's exactly what it is. But it's at the same time like this amazing space.
Mhm. I'd rather that than drugs, right? Any day. You know,
Yeah, right,
you don't have
exactly.
enough money for that.
Right.
No, yeah, and it's something you could pass on, just like, you know, you and your family are the first, you know, first generation bow hunter. So it's something that, you know, and that's kind of how I ran into you actually. And I probably should have introduced that way, but you know, just through Instagram, but also like I saw you and the DNA guys, because you know, I knew Nick before DNA Archery,
Okay.
and then, you know, him and his what was the little reel that they made that was hilarious, is like how DNA Archery came about. And I was like, one dumbass met another dumbass and they met a third
Yes.
dumbass. But
The
yeah, it's hilarious. But no, so I kind of saw your stuff popping up, and then, you know, you're really good into photography, videography stuff, editing, stuff that I know nothing about. um and so I think that's awesome, and we're definitely going to dive into that a little bit, because I've dabbled in it, and it's just not, it's too tedious for me. Whereas again, some people would think that all my bow tinkering is tedious, right? I've done so many like, dude, I changed my strings out 3 weeks ago. And our
No,
season started last
I
weekend,
believe
right?
it. Yeah.
And so for me, it's kind of funny, because I do the same thing to myself, you know. And then when the Ultra View guys were here up at my pro shop here in Wild Arrow, and I got that release in hand, I was like, oh man, I was like, here's another, because now I'm gonna need to buy one, and then I need to buy the backup, and
Yep.
now I'm gonna get into hinges because they
Yeah,
line up together.
100%.
Like that's the
Because
only
you
reason.
can.
Yeah, it's the only
Yep.
reason I haven't done a hinge, is because I shoot a Carter Wise choice, and they don't really have a good hid option that is the same anchor point. So I do, you know,
Yes.
hinge and back tension with their
Yes.
Evolution 20. But now,
Okay.
you know, I'm like, well,
Now
shoot,
you will.
that's like $600 out the window right there, like 3
Yeah.
releases, you know.
Oh yeah.
And hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this until after I
Yeah.
buy it, but
No. It's so true
but
though.
it is, and it's so much fun to mess around with. And but also on top of that, like, how do you feel about when you get out there? Like, I know you do, again, a lot of videography and photography while you're shooting, but you know, the times, I imagine there's times where you have the camera off and you're
Yeah.
just enjoying shooting.
Yeah.
You know, what how does that make you feel? Like, I don't mean to sound like a therapist here, but like, what are the feelings or thoughts that are going through your head when, you know, you're shooting your bow?
Yeah. So the camera piece and like filming stuff, and that's all really really new for me. So you know, shooting sessions for me was always very very like ultra like meditative from the beginning. The camera, I'm trying to still get used to that. And you Johnny, my camera dude, he runs my video camera. He won your recent giveaway, your first Phorm
Oh,
giveaway.
Jay Todd.
Yes, J
Oh,
Todd
cool,
Fit.
cool. Okay, awesome.
Yes, and so he runs all my video stuff, and but he's been shooting with me. I got him into archery probably 4 years ago, so he's been with me kind of since the beginning, and
Hold
then
on, I'm gonna
shooting
pause you
video.
there. You got
Yeah,
someone into archery already.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's that, you know, it just, it's one of those things that you're, when you're passionate about it, you bring people into the fold, and that's what we want. We want the numbers to go up rather
yeah,
than go down. But anyway, we'll get into that in a second. I just wanted to highlight
yeah.
that. You go ahead.
No, 100%. And so, yeah, Johnny's going. I've known Johnny. I met him at the gym. I've known him for like 10 years, and he actually came to the range with me one time, and I was shooting. He's like, "Oh, I think I want to get into this," and like randomly calls me like a couple weeks later. He goes, "I bought a bow. Bought a bow from a guy," and I was like, he goes, "This is a good deal," and I was like, "Oh yeah, for sure, get it." So he got it, and that's like history. Now he shoots alongside me, and he's like, "Hey, you know what?" Because I was telling him last year during Whitetail, I was like, "I think I want to film some stuff. I just want to like get like put some stuff out there. Like I don't know. I just feel like be fun to do and show the whole like Ohio whitetail piece and everything."
You don't want to do
And
that too much, man. That's
I
I've
know.
heard there's some thumpers out there that I need to go out there and check out. So
Yeah, you definitely, and that's another crazy thing is like, I think for a while there it was always like, oh, Ohio, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, like even Michigan, it's like junk whitetail hunting. But I don't know what's going on, if just property management's good or like, the hunters are doing their thing. But like I feel like it's booming, you know. But how I felt, you know, if you take the camera out of the equation, it was very meditative. I always loved like getting in, like, you know, I was a big Joe Rogan podcast listener, and he always talked about like that flow state. You get into that flow state and you're just vibing and everything's just smooth and you're just embracing that pin float and you're watching this arrow just hit where you want it. You just kind of get into a rhythm. And you know, for me, I feel like it takes longer than some people during the you know, session at the range. But once you're in it, you're like, I don't want to stop shooting. I just want to knock another arrow, and you're pulling and I just, that was one of the most addicting things. And you're always chasing this like idea of perfection with your groups in a way that you can't do at a gun range almost. It's like you can, but it's just so different. I think it just comes back to that, you know, slow ballistic and all these variables. And it's just, it's so addicting. And knowing, it's like a weird thing. It's a weird pursuit kind of. You know, you're not going to ever perfect it, but how many arrows of a 4-arrow group, you know, can I stack at 60, at 70, at 80? And then you get good at 80 and you want to go to 100, and then you miss at 100 and you question your entire existence and you don't know, you know, what's going on. And I love it. It's, I don't know. It's the one thing that I feel like you're constantly chasing, where you could say that almost in any sport, I feel like, but with archery, it's like your reward is so much more limited, I guess, like it than you know, in the gym or on the field or in the pool or on the track, or maybe it's the lack of opportunities or the limited opportunities you get. But just everybody I talk to, it's this, you know, genuine understanding that, you know, like right now, all these guys, you've put all this time in since whenever, maybe since the day your last season ended, and everybody knows in their head it's for one shot, maybe one. And I don't know, I get like goosebumps just thinking about it. Like that, all that preparation for, you know, a single moment is just awesome.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. You know, a lot of people get excited about, you know, the Super Bowl or family events or one event in the year or whatever, and they get excited about it. And that's definitely something that it's an interesting conundrum in a way, because you're by yourself usually. You're not usually with someone else when it happens, and you want to share it with everyone else when it does happen. You want to share those raw emotions. You want to, and no one else is ever going to be as excited for you as you are in that moment. Like, no, you can't inject those you know, the chemicals into their body that you're feeling flowing through your veins in the moment where, you know, either you missed, you hit, you even just had a stud buck come in, or a bull, you know, or even just like, I mean, I had a cool experience where I had a hummingbird fly around. It was about 2 hours where he kept coming in consistently, in and in and in. And like the first time, he kind of freaked me out because it sounded like a helicopter flying right past my ear. I was like, the frick? And then he's like hanging around my bow, and he actually like put his beak in my beard. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, I saw it on your Instagram. It
Yeah.
was wild.
Yeah, it's cool to have that while I was sitting there waiting for elk that never came in. But you know, but you know, it's one of those things where I would agree with you. You know, it's hard to replicate that emotion. I mean, the only I don't know. I've talked with a guy that he's won national championships in football, in college football. He's played with some great NFL teams. And he and I have chatted about his bow setup. I mean, he's got oh shoot, I don't want to misquote it, but I think it was a 32 or 33-inch draw.
Oh,
Maybe it was
geez.
34. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like he had to have a custom bow made from Hoyt for this.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, and his arrow's like 600 something grains and it's still flying at like 300 feet a second. Like it's ridiculous. I'm like, you might as well just shoot a missile at the animal.
Yeah, he's probably
But
shooting a yardstick, right?
right, exactly.
I
Seriously.
mean,
They have to make because I think most arrows come at like 31 inches. So I think he even had to
yeah,
get like custom arrows made. It's ridiculous.
goodness.
But he loves it. And he's talked about it. He's like, it's a similar emotion to when you're in that game of the national championship for college. You know, it's that, so you've worked all year or multiple years. You know, another buddy of mine just came, and he's worked for 6 years now. I just recently met him in the last couple months, but become fast friends. And he just barely tagged his first archery buck after 6 years of putting in work. Of he works on people's bows. He does like all this stuff for all these other people. He sees all these other people's success, and he finally tagged out on his own. And that emotion, I mean, after 6 years, you've been shooting a bow for 6 years.
Right.
Imagine not ever having tagged out and finally getting that archery buck, like the emotions that go through, you know. And so it's
Yes.
just, it's something you can't duplicate, and it's something you can't explain to people unless you've been there, you know. So anyway, I think you put it in a really good way. And so, you know, with archery, you obviously don't have to be as fit as you are, but it helps. And talk a little bit maybe about you've been to New Mexico once or twice before?
Just only one time. It was my first time ever, you know, being west ever, for vacation or ever seeing the Western United States.
Hmm.
But only one time, and this September will be my second time out. But yeah, so being out there, and so everything I know from a whitetail perspective here is just completely different out there. I think maybe the core piece of it, like, you know what you're doing, and all right, my plan is to go out, walk, sorry, my dog,
Oh, you're
listen
good.
for, look for a sign, find an elk, make a stalk, or sit water and do your thing. You at least know that piece of it. What guys like me out here, you know, your flatlanders, what I think that they don't understand is you're 1,000 feet maybe, and when you're there, you know, you can be, depending on where you're at, you know, 6, 7, 9, 10,000 feet, and that is a very different place than you know, what you're used to. So everything around hunting out west for me was like, I was just trying to like absorb everything like a sponge, you know. I know how to shoot my bow. I know, you know, where my vitals are for my animal that I'm going after, but everything outside of that's different. I mean, hunting on the ground was so foreign to me. I was overly paranoid like my first couple of days, and like coming across animals, and you know, coming across one of the first days I was out there, this big bull and had all these cows, and I was like almost afraid to draw. I was like, he's gonna see me. There's no way he's not gonna see me. So like the basis of hunting out there is so different. Um, physically though, there's things that, you know, I wish there was like a really good way for me to replicate elevation training. So, you know, my biggest thing here is like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to ruck hill climbs, and then do the stair mill, and then ruck, and then do the stair mill, because I can do it all day, but going out there, it's like, you know, it's still going to be that plus a heavier pack, more likely,
Mhm.
plus, you know, 10,000 feet or 9,000 feet added. Um, so I think, you know, for me, my mindset is just, and I'm still so new to all of it. It's like, I'll come home this year and I'll be like, I have to change everything like I did last year, and just change, you know, my nutrition plan, change my lifting plan. But I took as much as I could from last year, adjusted, and you know, I'm hoping that it pays off going in there this year. But you know, I think you can do everything you can do here proactively. But just my biggest thing is always, anybody that's going out there is, hey, just understand there's going to be a level of discomfort just because of these factors, that as long as you know that, you're golden. And if as long as you embrace that piece, I think you're fine. Because you can't replicate certain things. And sometimes it's just go do it, and you'll get through it. I think as long as you are in that mindset going into it, you'll be good.
Yep. No, yeah. I like that. And it's a good perspective, because there are a lot of people that, excuse me, that go from the East Coast and then they come out here just for a week or 2 weeks.
Yep.
And that's a big change because, you know, you probably take a day or two to acclimate even. And I want to ask a little bit about, you know, the nutrition while you're out there as well, because that's a big thing too. People want to grab the easiest carbs, the easy, you know, the sugar, the Pop Tarts, the gummy bears, all the stuff that you're like craving while you're up there. If you don't have your nutrition on point. And so some ways that you have found to mitigate it is, you know, just typical ruck and stairmaster training. Obviously you can't imitate elevation, but you can get used to, you know, walking, get your body accustomed to walking with something heavy on your hips and shoulders, and then walking up a lot of stairs, because there's a lot of places that it feels like you're walking upstairs. But as far as, you know, so you've got some good cardio in there. You know, something that I've noticed too, and that I've played around with, is just, even people don't necessarily think about this all the time because muscles are cool to have, and the bigger the muscles, you know, it looks better. But when you're out there 40 pounds, your body doesn't care if it's 40 pounds of muscle or 40 pounds of fat. It knows
Right.
there's 40 pounds there that
Right.
it's lugging around. And I'd even say it's harder to maintain the muscle mass while you're out there, because you're burning those many extra calories
Yeah.
while you're out there, because you have so much, your muscle bellies are bigger. And so is that something that you took away from last year, that maybe not trying to bulk so much, that you were looking more for kind of leaning out and dialing in there? Or what was, you know, when you say you changed some things, what were some things that you changed?
Yeah, 100%. So, you know, for me, like I always felt like I was like a hard gainer. Um, like I could cut like pretty easily, but gaining was always something I felt like was difficult. So typically throughout the year, I always find myself at least one point in the year, like 6 months or so, I try to dedicate to like adding, you know, trying to build like nice lean tissue, do more of like your lean bulk. But 100%. So I went out there last year. I had that idea, like probably lighter's a little bit better, and reduced my calories from, like, I think I was in a like 500 calorie surplus, and I reduced it back to what would have been maintenance at that weight at that time, and rode that out for August. And then when I went because we were early September last year, when I went to my hunt, I just was under the understanding, okay, well, I'm going to be in sort of an inadvertent deficit, and that's just how it's going to be. Um, Speaking of the DNA guys, I was actually just talking to Nick the other day. He's going out for his first Colorado archery elk, and we were going through some food stuff and like what his calories look like for the like a daily breakdown, and he's just going to repeat that for, I think, 8 days he can fit in his pack. And we were joking, we're like, well, it only has to fit once, because he's like, I think it's gonna be tight on space. I'm like, you just have to fit it in. Just day one has to fit, and then you're good. But for me this year, yeah, I have stopped all plans of bulking. I'm in this like sort of purgatory of training where I'm pushing it, but I'm not lifting heavy to the point of injuring anything. I'm trying to mitigate all risk. Right now, the last thing I need is to, like, you know, be pulling like moderate weight and have a
Mhm.
slap tear or something, and with a deadlift or um, but food wise, I've cut one like midday meal out, which I hate doing. I do feel smaller every day, but that's okay, because it is what it is. I'll be able to add the food back in, you know, after September, I guess October. But so yeah, that's my sort of my plan right now. So I'm kind of riding it out till I get in there, and then just understand I'm bringing a belt. I didn't bring a belt last year. I'm bringing a belt because my pants were falling off last year, and it is what it is. It's gonna be, it's gonna be fine. That's what I'm telling myself. Uh,
I've got a good belt recommendation,
yeah.
for especially if you've got a pack. Have you seen the arcade belts?
Uh-uh.
So they're like a stretchy, it's like an elastic material almost, but I've even tested it with my concealed carry, and it
Yeah.
holds the concealed carry pretty well. I'd still prefer a stiff belt for concealed carry, but it holds it, and
Okay.
it doesn't give you, like, when you cinch your pack belt around it, it
Yeah.
doesn't hurt. It doesn't
Oh,
dig
okay.
into your hips. It's that
Yeah.
stretchy material, but it holds your pants up. And then you can adjust it super easy by cinching it down, like when you start losing weight or whatever. So I
Oh,
can
cool.
shoot that over to you as well afterwards. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was trying to find a good, because I have the same issue where I start, either like most of my pants, I get them sized so that I can comfortably have a concealed carry,
Yeah.
um, and not be squeezing my gut with it. And so when I'm out in the mountains and then I lose a little bit of weight, it's like, okay, crap. Like I'm walking around holding my pants up. So it's either suspenders, which I've tried and
Yeah.
I just don't
Me
like them.
either.
And then I found this belt. So I'll shoot that over to you. But
Okay,
um,
great.
yeah, that's awesome, man. And again, for people that are, out there that really do enjoy the aesthetic portion as well, which, if you're married, your wife enjoys it as well, but you enjoy seeing that progress. It's not always good to even have a lot of muscle, when you come out. I wouldn't say hold that in fat either, just drop the weight,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
lean out a little bit. So that's awesome. And then as far as you mentioned well, let's talk about nutrition a little bit up there. So what are some things that you do to help? Because if your nutrition's poor, you're already probably going to have a headache day 1 or 2 if you're coming from
Right.
sea level or even just 1,000 feet up to 7 to 10,000 feet. That's a drastic change, and then you're pushing your
Yeah.
body on top of that more than it usually is. So you're probably going to have some sort of headache. What are some ways that you have found to mitigate that?
So I feel like I was lucky going out there. I was like, that was one thing I was really worried about was the altitude sickness. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to handle it. I've never been in those situations, but um, going out there, I didn't feel like I had to acclimate from like a headache standpoint, which was great. Breathing was different on the first day. That was a completely different story. But no, from that point, I think good. Um, and I know people, I've heard like, oh, drink as much water as you want. It doesn't matter. Water's good. But then, I know First Form has hydration supplements. Mountain Ops has stuff. Mountain Warrior has stuff. Everybody has some good stuff. Mostly like sodium, potassium blends that are awesome. So last year, I think I took out liquid IV actually, and that worked pretty good. This year, I'm taking some Mountain Ops out there, but it, you know, just staying hydrated from with those like additives, those were great for me. I didn't feel like I had a lot of cramping, um, which was good. Food wise, so at base camp, there's like a little short trailer, like single axle trailer, and it has like everything you can imagine, like Little Debbie's or the things you're talking about, like or
All the
granola
sugar.
bars. Yes, yeah, yeah, your rocket fuel type, stuff. And I have a pretty good understanding for me specifically, like what I can and can't get away with from a carb perspective. I always do feel really confident in bumping my carbs when I want it, but for what I guess application too. Like if I'm trying to sustain, I'm not just going to dump a bunch of fast burning carbs in my system versus like I might in those cases like if I know I'm not going to get back or I'm going to stretch my food for that day because I'm always coming back to base camp, which is nice. I'm not bivvying it or anything like that, so I can always re-up when I'm there. I might opt for like a nut butter or something like that, and really bump the fat. That was something I was talking to somebody else with, which more of like your keto approach. I have to have me personally, some carbs in there. Like more, strict keto approach for me. I burn out really quick,
Mhm.
just personally. But if I add in fats and I add in those nut butters and stuff, that will help me big time. I've noticed
Right.
huge, whether it's the, protein spike for like my blood sugar or it's the actual fat. It's like life saving almost, like those F bombs and stuff that
Yeah.
I've tried those. Great.
Mm.
But I definitely balance out the carbs. Last year, I told Nick about these. The one thing I really liked was Cliff Bar has these power blocks,
Mhm.
and those things were amazing. You can get them like with salt added, like sea salt added on top.
Hmm.
They're amazing. So if I was feeling like, oof, I'm like struggling on the second half of the day or something, I would just pop a couple of those, and they were great.
No, yeah, that
Um,
makes sense.
yeah, but nothing over the top for nutrition there. Like I think I was telling him breakfast was more of like a breakfast burrito, egg, chopped up bacon, like just real basic, but that was it. You're not eating again until your midday break, and then you're not eating again until after dark. And if you make your kill and have your harvest and you're packing it out and you're coming back, then you're not eating until technically the next day anyway. So
Yep.
But that's like sort of in a nutshell, like what I did last year, and I'm sure it's going to be very similar this year based on what I'm bringing and what I know will be there.
Awesome. No, yeah, I like it. I think, I don't think you're correct in saying you were lucky. You prepped, and that's the thing is you have had good nutrition through that entire year, and you worked out consistently through that entire year. So your body had stuff to deal with, but you had already fueled it and prepared it to deal with that. And I think that's where a lot of things, like some people maybe are more prone to headaches or whatever, but definitely, the water, the hydration. Before first Phorm came out with the hydration stuff, I did liquid IV last year, having some form of electrolytes, not just water, because you're going to pee the water out real quick. I mean, you're up there, you're sweating it out, you're peeing it out, but you need to make sure that you've got the electrolytes. So whatever your electrolyte, obviously, I recommend the first Phorm stuff, or liquid IV. Those are my top two recommendations for sure. But just look at what electrolytes are in your mix, and I definitely recommend that for sure in your pack. And then snacks throughout the day. Yeah, I don't know if you notice this personally, but like for me, I noticed that if I don't like a lot of carbs in the morning necessarily, but throughout the day while I'm burning them, I like having like the honey stingers. I'm gluten free,
Yeah.
so they have a couple of good options that are gluten free. I found one recently, the cinnamon one. It tastes like a churro. So the honey stingers are great. And then of course, I like protein, and then the protein bars. I found a way to not let them melt because that sucks.
Yeah.
Just stick them in the middle or bottom of your pack under all your clothes after having
Okay.
them in the cooler all night, and then put them in the bottom of your pack. It stays out of the sun, and then the midday you get a nice cold protein bar that you can chomp on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but that's kind of those are my go-to. And then of course meat sticks, jerky, whatever you choose. And those are kind of my go-to snacks as well. So, trying to keep it as clean as possible. It was funny, we were up this weekend and my buddy pulls out, the Pop-Tarts and the gummies and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not even, I can't have Pop-Tarts, first of all, because the gluten, but I just kind of looked at it and I was like, like that looks like a stomach ache later. So I handed him some of my stuff and he was like, dude, like this is so much better.
Right.
So
I think some people don't know. They're like, oh well, I'm just gonna grab this quick stuff. They're single packages, and make it easy on myself. But like like we said in the beginning, you can do it. Maybe with a little forethought and stuff. But you can definitely get your better ratios in there of good stuff, less processed stuff, which is always huge.
yeah, and your body if you're pushing it past its limits, it
Yeah.
needs to have something that's going to allow it to do that, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to have a sugar crash later,
Right.
or you're
Right.
going to eat another Pop-Tart in an hour and then another hour and another hour, right? So, I agree with you on that. It is almost a kind of a keto approach, especially if you bring a bunch of nuts and stuff like that. But having that good mix of fuels, I definitely agree with that seems to work for me as
Yeah.
well. That's awesome, man. So is there anything that you want to share with the listeners that, I haven't brought up, or anything that you're interested? I know we said we are going to talk about photography and videography, but I don't want to keep you more than the hour. I promise. I know you've got stuff to do, but is there anything you want to share that we didn't bring up?
I was talking about this with my father-in-law last time we shot last weekend, and he's like, "Yeah, if you ever do another one of those podcast things, you should talk about this." And it was basically that, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but I don't know if you hear a lot about how difficult like bow hunting is. And I think like you see a lot of good things, you see a lot of success, you see a lot of, Instagram, grip and grins or reels or YouTube videos or the outdoor channel. And you get out there, and I mean, me specifically, I felt like this. I put years in before anything went down. And I'm like, am I doing it right? Am I messing up every part of this, or what's happening? My thing is, I think there needs to be a little bit, I don't know if it just needs to be talked about more or what, but everybody's going through it. I just don't know if people don't want to talk about it, or it makes you, look less successful, but it's a very hard sport, and you're in nature, and that whole saying, like, nature doesn't give a shit, and
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, no, it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't, and those animals they're surviving. They're survivors. That's what they've done. It's a battle of you versus you versus them versus you versus your landscape and stuff. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your thought on that, because I don't know if, at least for me, I don't feel like people are like, yeah, you know what, like, not failed, but I failed year after year after year in terms of like direct success.
Hmm.
And for me, I feel like I relate to that personally. Like, um, you know, trying to get everything to line up and be perfect, uh, and then still have to execute perfect, is there's a lot there.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So, and I've talked about it a couple times, and I do agree with you that it's not. So for me personally, I try and not just show the successes. I actually try and show the failures more than the successes because of that. Because I've kind of gone through that too, where you're like, well, am I just not in the right place? Like I did all this e-scouting and the elk are supposed to be here, right?
Right.
But who didn't tell them? Like, like all the sign is here. They were here. I'm not wrong. They're just not here right now. Right. And so, last year I didn't tag out on my over the counter elk. And I was okay with it because I put in everything that I could. Something that was a big help for me was elk shape. Right. So Dan and
Yeah.
elk shape,
Yeah.
he's very real. He gets multiple
Yes.
tags and he doesn't tag out on them every single year, but he makes sure that he puts in 100% effort and more. And that's
Yeah.
how I felt I was last year. All the days that I had that I could go out, I was out there. I was out there from before dark until after dark. I put in as much effort as I could. And if I felt like I wasn't doing enough, I got my butt up and went somewhere else and made sure I did. So that at the end of the season, I was like, you know what? I didn't bring elk meat home, but all my friends had these successes. I helped them pack stuff out. They're giving me meat. I tagged out on a couple other animals. So like, you're right. It's not easy. And if you're going to get into bow hunting, you need to be okay with failure, and you need to accept, when I say failure, you need to accept that you've done everything in your control. Control the controllables, right?
Yep.
You can't control if the elk's going to be there or not. That's impossible.
Right.
I can't even control if my son's going to be where he's supposed to be or not, let
Right.
alone, and I have more control over that than I do an elk. So, but I know where they're supposed to be. I've done my homework. I did my e-scouting. And I'm fit enough that I can walk around and be miles and miles and miles in a day. Um, and when you get that inkling to either go home because it's sucking, because that happens too, even on one day hunts or weekend hunts, sometimes you're like, screw it, there's only one more evening. I can just go home. My wife would
Yep.
probably appreciate that more anyway. It happens. It really does. But I'd rather have the conversation with her on the way home that, you know, this is how I was feeling. I really did miss you guys, but I pushed through that and stayed out there. And even though I'm not bringing anything home, this was the experience I had. And I feel like I gave everything. So I don't regret it at all. I don't regret my elk season last year. And going into this year, like, I'm not going to regret anything that happens, whether I tag it out or not. I've got a feeling I've got a big bull that's waiting for me out there.
Right.
But it is what it is. And as long as I put in the effort, that's what matters. And I agree with what your father-in-law was saying. And you went through a couple years without success. People that I look up to as well, like Dan, again, he said he went, I think it was 6 or 7 years, and he's elk shaped, dude. Like he is as
That's what I
obsessed
mean.
with elk as you
Yeah.
can get. And it
Yeah.
still took him 6 or 7 years to tag out with a bow,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know. So
Yeah. A true testament to, the level of, proficiency. I mean, we've all seen him shoot, and and obviously, him being that area, knowing it. He's fit. He checks all the boxes, and to say, hey, this is what it takes, and this is what it took. And like you said, it takes time. That's one thing that my father-in-law was saying. There's no substitute for the hours in. You can say I've hunted this year, but if you went once a week for 4 hours, 4 times, did you really hunt? Did you really give yourself the chance? So yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, and that was another thing too, that my buddy that got me into bow hunting, he was like, when he was talking to me about it, he was like, you're okay with failing. And, I use that term lightly, or not lightly, because when I say failure, again, you control everything you can. You control your fitness, you control your nutrition, you control your attitude, and you control your proficiency with your weapon, which in this case is a bow.
Sure.
You can control all of those things. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control how much water has been dumped or not dumped. You
Yep.
cannot control, which cows go into heat when, like all of those things are completely out of your control.
Right.
So, and all of those things are also factors into whether or not you're going to have success. It is what it
100%.
is. But it's, he was telling me, he's like, you're okay with failing, or as in not tagging out. I don't consider that failure, to be honest with you. If you look at that as failure, I think you're looking at it wrong, because again, the failure comes from not being fit enough to go out and do what you need to do, not having proper nutrition, not having plans. So now you have to go back into town and get stuff. Not having a good attitude, not sighting in your bow, not, like all of those things, that's failure, in my opinion. But not tagging out, that's not failure, unless you just went out for one day, and said,
exactly.
Oh, screw it, I didn't see anything. Again, that's attitude. That goes back to you and your choices. So that there's you got to shift your idea on failure as well, because tagging out is not success necessarily. It's a portion of it. It's a symptom of success, in my opinion. But it doesn't always happen, and you can still have a successful season. So
no, you're 100% right.
Yep. Awesome. Well, cool. Thanks for sharing that, man. I plug wherever you want to plug. I don't know. Do you have a website? I know you've got Instagram, obviously, but you've got a YouTube.
Instagram. Yeah. So Instagram is my name, but spelled all weird. So it's Joe Goubeaux. You can just look it up on RedBeard's Instagram. It's on there. I don't even want to spell it. There's so many vowels in my last name. And YouTube, I think, is the exact same thing. So hopefully more stuff with the whitetail season going on YouTube, and just seeing where it takes me, man. It's been a few months, whipping the camera around again, and to just see where it goes.
Awesome. I love it, man. Yeah, you guys go check him out. He does some awesome editing. He does great photography, some cool reels on Instagram, great pictures as well. Uses good quality products. So go check him out, and I'll leave the links down below so you don't have to spell his name out. And as I always say, guys, get out, live your life, and love it.